Elisa Messer, AFT 2121, City College of San Francisco faculty. I'm here today because it's an important day of action for workers and students and retirees and folks all across San Francisco. We need to be coming together to talk about what's happening both to the social safety net, to education, to talk about what's going on and why we need to be joining together with Occupy and as part of the 99% so that we can take back what's rightfully ours from the 1% and ask them to pay their fair share.
What exactly is going on as far as education in the community colleges?
Well, there's a lot going on. There's not just one thing. One of the things that's going on right now is that in the process of squeezing our budgets, right, we're seeing more students, and particularly vulnerable students, poor students, students of color, squeezed out. We're seeing fee increases that have just gone up astronomically. Just since 2003, we've gone from $11 a unit to $36 a unit. We're looking at $46 a unit next year. It's a terrible situation for our students, and a lot of students can't get waivers from those fees. So we're also seeing a series of attacks that would really change what the community college system is able to do and what sort of education it's able to offer and which students are able to get that education. So there's a squeeze going on that could squeeze out immigrant students, poor students, and could really change what community colleges are able to do.
What is privatization? How does that figure into what's going on in education?
Well, it figures in a lot of different ways. One of them is what I was just mentioning, this squeeze going on with these changes. There's a task force that is just releasing this week its final recommendations on what should be happening with the community college system. We see it as an attack that's coming from many of the same perspectives as what's happened in K-12 and EC K-12 education in terms of testing, in terms of deciding who should and should not have access to college, and is following many of those same patterns that we saw in No Child Left Behind and in Race to the Top. So we're very concerned about these task force recommendations, and most of what's happening with these task force recommendations has been funded by private so-called educational interests, including Lumina and some of the other foundations that have historically been part of these attacks and these privatization attacks both in K-12 and now we're seeing more and more in higher education.
There was a march yesterday in New York by the Labor Council of about 20,000 workers. There was a general strike on Wednesday of the British Public Workers Union. Do you see that happening in the United States? Should it happen?
Well, I've never felt more hopeful than right now. So I think that's what we need to build towards, and I think we need to see our students and we need to see our retirees. We need to see everybody involved in moving towards something like that.
Now, public workers and teachers are being blamed for the crisis. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, obviously, I find that a little bit ludicrous, right? We're the folks who are on the front lines, who are offering the services, who are educating students. We know that California needs education. We know that California needs a social safety net. It needs in-home care workers, right? We're not the ones who have caused this, right? The banks got bailed out and we got sold out, right? And so these attacks really should not be happening to us. I think that's obvious. And what's so great about Occupy and what's so great about the last couple of months is it's clear that Californians feel the same way.
Ron Dix, Western Region Vice President for IFPTE, International Federation of Professional Technical Engineers.
Who do they represent?
In San Francisco, we represent city employees from planners to housing inspectors to IT technicians to water lab chemists.
And why are you here today?
Well, we're here today to represent the 99% who are being victimized and to highlight the economic disparities that exist in the American model.
Do you think that Jerry Brown or Obama are going to solve the problems that we're having in this country?
No, the Democrats will not solve any of our problems. The biggest myth to me that exists in the American model today is the sham pretension of two political parties. And it's really a sham. We don't have two political parties in this system. Basically, under the American model of democracy, we have one party that favors the rich. They just have two different masks that they frame themselves in, one called Democrat, one called Republican.
On November 2nd, there was a mass march here. What did you think about that and the call for the general strike?
Well, Well, I think a general strike is something that has to be put on the table. I mean, anyone who has been paying attention for the last 30 years or more is cognizant of the fact that workers, we have not done well under the present system, which is why we're all out here trying to express this.
And what's happening with public workers at this point?
Well, we're constantly getting beat up. I don't see any end in sight. Our pensions are being put on. I mean, public workers did not initiate what happened. It was Wall Street. They were bailed out, but yet they don't want to bail out cops or firemen or teachers or the people who do the power stuff in public power areas. You know, it's just a war on the working class. So they're getting beat up.
It's going to stop it.
Only the people will stop it.
I am Richard Nee. I am a freelance journalist in San Francisco, very active on First Amendment and freedom of information issues. And what we see here is the First Amendment manifest, people speaking their minds. Although as a journalist I'm really not supposed to demonstrate any kind of partisanship, there comes a point where we also have, as journalists, to speak truth to power, and that's why I'm out here today.
And you're a member of?
Pacific Media Workers Guild, CWA Local 39521. I am in the freelance unit.
Converged on the Hyatt Regency, carrying signs that read public interest, not private gain. Mary Weingarten lectures at San Francisco State, where students yesterday started their own encampment.
We are so underpaid and overworked, and it's so unfair to our students that their tuition was raised yet again by 9%, and a lot of my students are working 2 jobs and they can't afford it, and they deserve that education.
Well, basically I'm here because their UPS is trying to ram like a bad contract down our throat. They're trying to blame the economy, and they're trying to blame the unions for UPS losing money, when we know it's just that they're the ones who are just soaking up all the money for management. So,
And what are the conditions for workers at UPS today?
they're pretty bad. I actually just got off of a 10-hour shift, and you know, they work you really hard, and if we didn't have union representation, they would work us even harder than they're working us now. It's you know, some people aren't even getting their half-hour breaks, and they're working like 10 hours, and so again, which is against California state laws and everything. So,
Well, UPS says they're having trouble, but aren't they making a profit? Aren't they a profitable company?
they're very profitable. So they're profitable because they eke out all of their profits from the workers. So 2785 Teamsters.
Marchers started at the federal building, then made their way down in front of the Hyatt Regency downtown.
Unified School District, but I went back and taught for 1 year at Oakland when they were having cutbacks and problems, and last year at Mount Diablo for a few months. I teach special ed, and there have been cutbacks all across the board with public education, but they've been especially onerous on special education.
And why is that?
Special ed is expensive to do it right. You need teachers that are well trained and teacher aides, and their classes have been packed and teacher aides have been taken out of the classrooms.
Are charters a solution to this crisis in education?
No, it's not. Charter schools have the ability to not accept the most challenging students. And many of them do that. They choose not to accept the most challenging students, whether they're special ed or not.
Why is that?
It's easier. You don't have to deal with special ed. You're dealing with a plethora of federal and state laws to protect the kids.
It seems like there are going to be more budget cuts. Governor Brown says there's another 1.4 million. What's the solution for public workers, for education, public services in the United States and in California?
I grew up partly in California schools back when they were the best in the nation. The public funded them. Corporations funded them. We had a well-established, before Prop 13, for those of you who are aware of Prop 13, we need to get back to that dedication, both from the pre-K through higher ed, that we are responsible for the education of our state. Everybody's responsible for it. And when you cut back in education, you cut back on what makes California strong and what makes the U.S. strong.
Because we the people are supposed to run this country, but instead it's all run by and for the few. Because now we know the rich do not pay taxes, but when they need a hand it's us who bail them out. Because we suspected we lived in a plutocracy, but suddenly of late there is no doubt. So we're gonna stay right here. We're gonna stay right here. Because both my parents lost their savings. Because I have never opened an account. Because the interest on my credit card just doubled, and now I can't pay the minimum amount. Because these budget cuts are just immoral, with our schools as overcrowded as they are. Because there are no buses where I live, but I can't afford to drive a car. Because so many of us don't have health insurance. The rest of us have it, but it sucks. Because the rich are flying in their private jets, while the rest of us are slogging through the muck. Because capitalism isn't working. This system has just failed to produce. Because the 1% are prospering, while the rest of us just suffer their abuse. So we're gonna stay right here. What are we gonna do? We're gonna stay right here. Because it has been demonstrated amply that the winners are the ones who stick around. Because this world should belong to everyone, not just the banksters who would smash it to the ground. Because we've noticed voting doesn't change things when the politicians are mostly millionaires. Because we're learning how to stand up like Tunisians, like they did in Tahrir Square, where a young man named Mohammed Bouazizi struck a match that lit up all the earth. And all around the world the spell was broken, and the movement for the future was in birth. Because there's only so much crap the rich can feed us before we figure out which side we're on. Because we've learned if we want our liberation, it will only come if we stay here till the rising of the dawn. So we're gonna stay right here. We're gonna stay right here. Because corporations are not people, and we can't just let them choose. Because if we leave our fate to them, then all of us will surely lose. Because the climate clock is ticking, and we can't just leave our world behind. Because corporate rule isn't working, and it's time for humans' hearts and minds. Because you can't take it with you. Because the rich just do not care. Because it doesn't matter how much you make, but how much you can share. Because these moments don't come often. Because we want truly to be free. Because we know what really matters. Something called society. So we're gonna stay right here. We're gonna stay right here. We're gonna stay right here. What are we gonna do? We're gonna stay right here.
Mayor Ed Lee explained that while officers made a tactical retreat yesterday, patience with the protesters is running out.
In fact, I told them, when we do come in, you'll know. There'll be no question, you'll know. And when you say when we come in, it's going to happen.
Well, I've suggested them time and time again, and they know that, and that's why they are in some kind of anxiety state that time is of limit.
To help bolster support amongst the camp today, protesters erected a statue incorporating yesterday's abandoned police barriers as a symbol of their resistance.